All right, hello everybody. Jason Stapleton here. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this issue with these folks down on Wall Street. And we've been having this has been covered ad nauseum, and nobody, I don't think, outside of our little group would care what I have to say about it. But I do think that it's important that we address it. We've been having a great conversation in writing on my Facebook page, and we've had very civil, by the way, people pro and against, but everybody voicing their opinions with vigor and ferocity, while at the same time not criticizing and dragging down others, which I think is a way you have a legitimate debate. The issue that I have with the folks on Wall Street right now, not the Wall Street fat cats, but with the Occupy Wall Street folks, is that their anger is misdirected. It's being directed at people on Wall Street who took a bunch of very, very risky loans. And then when those loans went bad, they received a bailout from the government, who turned around and gave them money. And I want to kind of explain in layman's terms as best I can exactly what happened that caused that. You see, banks don't normally make those type of risky bets without some sort of insurance. They recognize that they're not stupid people. They're quite intelligent, and they know what type of harm they're doing by taking subprime loans in massive quantities and purchasing them, and then purchasing insurance on top of those. There is, if you read the book The Big Short, it would suggest that these bankers, really didn't know what it was they were doing, and probably by the time it all came to a head, they didn't know what they were doing. But at the beginning of this whole mess, they did, and I want to explain kind of how that happened. You see, this started really back. It's so funny because you've got guys like Barney Frank and Chris Dodds who are talking about writing all this legislation, and who are the first to jump up and tell you what a terrible, terrible place Washington is, and or Wall Street is, and how they screwed up everything, and how this is why we need more regulation and more governance and more government in order to protect us against evil, massive corporations and evil, massive empires like these big banks. But it was, in fact, these same two individuals who created this mess in the very first place. And it doesn't matter that they're Democrats versus, I mean, Republicans are just as guilty of taking this, doing these types of things as Democrats are. So I don't want to get into a debate on which political party deserves the credit, or which one deserves all of the condemnation for the issues that have been created here. It's everybody. It's Washington as a whole that is the problem. And I want to kind of explain how. You see, this really got its start during when they decided they were going to outlaw what's called redlining of districts. You see, when you buy a house, you don't really buy that house. What you do is you go to a bank and you get, unless you paid all cash for it, you go to the bank and you get a loan. And the bank looks at you and says, yes, we think that if we buy this house and we let you live in it and pay us, that you're a good credit risk. Because they know that within 7 years you're probably going to move and you're going to buy another house and you're going to continue to make payments on that. It's almost like leasing a car, except at the end of the lease term you actually own the house. So when you purchase a property, you don't really own it. The bank owns it. And you're paying the bank, and they offer you some tax incentives here in America to do that, but you as a whole do not own that property. The bank owns it until you make the last payment on it. Well, banks are not stupid. They don't want to buy and own property that is going to depreciate in value, or that's going to belong to a person who's not going to pay for it, who's going to treat it badly, or is in an area where it's bound to get graffiti or broken into or destroyed or burned down or something like that. And so what was happening was the banks were looking at specific areas, and they're saying, look, these are extremely low rent, these are dangerous neighborhoods, these are areas where there is a high probability that we're going to have problems, and that the homeowner themselves is going to have problems making the payment. And so the banks made a decision that we don't want to own property in these areas of town. And they did what was called redlining, where they redlined it out and said, we are not going to write any loans in this neighborhood. Well, the problem with that is that disproportionately affected minorities, because in those neighborhoods was a large portion of minority citizens. And so this got those in power all up in a tizzy about these evil, greedy banks who were refusing to make loans to low-income buyers, wouldn't let them get ahead, were holding them down, and they said, no more of that. No more redlining districts. You have to treat every single person individually. And they made it a rule. Banks said, all right. So they start looking at them everybody individually and saying, look, these are just not credit-worthy people. We really cannot loan to these people and feel secure that we're making a good investment here. You know, we're a bank. The only way we make money is if people pay off their loans, and if we're constantly eating the costs of all of these types of issues, then we're just not going to be able to do it. And so the government made another rule, and they said, no. A certain percentage of every single one of the loans that you make has to be, not just that you can't redline, but that you have to loan to these people, a certain percentage of them. And the banks say, well, listen, we can't do this. This is not a good practice. Because if we loan to all these people who we know have a high percentage of default rate, we're going to end up owing a bunch of really bad properties in bad neighborhoods, and that's not good business. And so the government says, well, hang on. We partial ownership in these companies, Freddie, Fannie. And what we'll do is we will insure those loans. So if you take one of these loans, if you write one of these loans to one of these people who's high probability of defaulting, then we will go ahead and we will insure that person in the event that they do default. Now, where does that insurance come from? Well, that insurance comes from you and I. It comes from the taxpayer. That's who ends up footing the bill. And the banks say, well, all right, if you eliminate all of my risk, if I have absolutely no risk at all of, losing money on this deal because you guys are underwriting it, well, then that's fine. And then slowly over time, the government increased the percentage, increased the number of subprime mortgages that it would insure, until eventually it spawned and grew into this issue where the government said the bankers were saying, well, it's all right, let's just write as many loans as we can to as many people as we can, and then we'll bundle them all up and we'll create all these different tranches, layers inside where we'll package up really bad loans with really good loans, and we'll sell that on Wall Street as a REIT, and we'll see what can happen there. And then not only that, but we'll also have kind of another option where we can buy insurance on those particular derivatives. And they created another investment vehicle and a way for a few people to make a whole lot of money when the whole thing came crashing down. Now that's I'm painting some broad strokes there, and some of you who really understand this process are going to say, yes, Jason, but there's more to it than that, and you're right, there is more to it than that. But when we're painting with a broad stroke, I just wanted to throw out there exactly what happened. That in virtually every single one of the instances where you see major catastrophic problems, and especially when it comes to this market that we're currently involved with, this didn't start on Wall Street. It wasn't a greedy Wall Street banker who decided that he was going to start writing loans that he knew were never going to get paid off. If the government hadn't been there to say, it's okay, don't worry about it, we'll insure you through the U.S. taxpayer, then those loans would have never gotten written. It would have never happened. This is not capitalism. This is not the way it should be. And so for all of you out there who are sitting on Wall Street right now, just start your little march. Do a little march. You collect people as you go. Hop on the streets, hop on the freeways, and just start walking. I want you to walk right down to the Capitol where all of your anger, all of your frustration should be addressed. And in so doing, I hope that we can solve some of these problems. And for those of you who are down on Wall Street right now and think that the whole world should be handed to you, who think that you deserve free health care and a pension and a retirement, that you deserve a job, I got nothing to say about that. You're a joke. Later.